Good day. Today we are going to work on Access Tutorial 3 in Class Project. So please download your instructions and download your database to start with. You only have the one database that you need. Make sure you save it as an _2, and then let's get started. Step 1 says open the therapist table in Datasheet view. So therapist table, we're going to open it in Datasheet view, so if you just double click on it, it will do that. Display the sub-data sheet for the record with therapist ID 699. So there's 699, and we're going to show it. And then it says, and then update the record with billing ID A84975 to include 3 sessions and an amount of $225. Okay, and then close the therapist table. Step 2, open the location table in Datasheet view. Change the font size for the datasheet to 12 points. So we're going to go here to font size, and we're going to say 12. And you'll see that it does do everything in that table, not just that one cell that is selected. Okay, select and resize the address column in the location table datasheet to best fit the data that it contains. So address, hover between address and city, double click for best fit. Delete the record with location ID C from the location table. Save and close the location table. So we're just going to right click on the edge and say delete record. Do we really want to do this? Yes, we do. And then when you close it, it's going to ask you if you want to save it, and you say yes. Okay, step 5. Create a new query in design view and based on the patient table. Okay, so let's go to create. And we're going to do query, but this time we want to do query design instead of query wizard. That will actually open up the query in design view. So we're going to say query design, and we want to base it on the patient table. So select the patient table. So you clicked patient and you say add. Say one time, that's all you need, and then say close. If you happen to hit it a couple of times and you get something like this where it says patient and patient_1, you can just remove that table. It's not going to affect anything. Okay, go ahead and resize it so that you can see all of your fields. And then create a new query. Add the first name, last name, birth date, and gender fields in that order to the query design. So the easiest way to do this is just to double click on the field that you want, and it's going to put it into the first available spot. So I want first name, and then I want last name, and then I want birth date, and I want gender. Save the query as patient birthdays, and then run it. So we're going to right click and we're going to say save. We're going to save it as patient birthdays. Make sure that you spell it correctly and say OK. And then up here in the top, you're going to see where it says to run it. And let me go ahead and show you that. So it's right there. It shows run, and that's what we want. So click run, and you're going to see it's the last name, or the first name, the last name, and their birth date and their gender is what's showing up. So that's what our query does. Step 6. In the patient's birthdays data sheet, so this is the data sheet associated with that query, use the filter by selection to select only those records for patients with an October date. So to do that, you can hit this down arrow, and you've got date filters. Okay, so you can click date filters right here, and you can say so you've got date filters here, but the easiest way actually to do this is choose an October birthday, and if you highlight the month 10 right there, and then come down here and do date filters, you should be able to select a begins with, and it's not letting me. So let's try that again, because I know it does it. There. So I was doing it incorrectly. So if you highlight the 10, then right click on it so that this little shortcut menu pops up and say begins with 10. And then it's going to filter only on those birthdays that begin with 10, which is October. And you know that your records are filtered when you look right there and you see that little icon. That means it's filtered on that field. Okay, redisplay all records in the data sheet, but do not clear the filter you just applied. So we're going to do that by clicking on this filter, and we're just going to say select all and say OK. Because we don't want to say clear this filter, because we don't want to clear the filter. We just want to display all the fields and say OK. And so now we're displaying all the fields again. And if we wanted to filter it, well, it's not letting us see it. Yeah, that didn't do it. Okay, so the other way that you can do this filter is, again, highlight the 10, but over here when you go to selection, click on selection, and there is your begins with 10, and you can choose that. And then once again, here's your toggle filter, which is what we want. Remove the filter, toggle it once again. That toggles your filter. Okay, once you've done that, save and close it. And let's go on to step 7. Create a new query in Design View that is based on the patient billing and therapist tables. So we're going to go create, query design again. This time we want patient, billing, and therapist. And say close. Go ahead and make all those so that you can see all the fields. And we're going to save the query as patients and therapists. So we're going to say save patients and therapists. Okay, then we want to add the last name field from the patient table. So patient last name. Then we want to add the last name field from the therapist table. And then add the start date, end date, sessions, and amount fields in that order from the billing table. So we want the start date, end date, sessions, and amounts. Save and run the query and then close it. So right click and say save, run it. Now you see all the information and we're done. So just close it. Okay, now use the navigation pane to copy the patients and therapist query and then paste it as patients and therapist March start. Okay, so we're just going to right click on patients and therapists and say copy, and then right click down at the bottom just in this white space and say paste, and remove the copy of, and then at the end of it put March start. Okay, then modify the patients and therapists March start query by adding a condition to the start date field. So let's go ahead and we're going to open this in Design View, and In the start date field, we're going to add a condition, which is criteria. In this criteria field, that's where we put our conditions. And we want contracts that begin on or after March 1st, 2016. So this is going to be a simple greater than or equal to 3/1/2016. And close your quotes. Okay, so once you've done that, now you can run it. Well, it didn't like it, did it? There, sorry. The quotes were wrong. It's just supposed to be the pound signs, I believe. Let's see. There we go. So if we run it, now you can see they have the start dates are all not in March, because that's not in March. Okay, sorry about that. It was correct, and I wasn't looking at the data properly.
Because it should be greater than or equal to March. So not just those that March, it's those that are March or later, which obviously April and June qualify for that. But we did leave out one part of this query, and that was that they don't want you to be able to see the start date. So you need to uncheck this box for show. So if you uncheck that and then run it, you'll see the start date doesn't show. Once you've done that, you can save it and close it, and you're done with that. Okay, now step 9. In the navigate pane, copy the patients and therapists March start query and rename it as patients and therapists March. So copy it and then paste it and remove the copy of and then remove start. Oh, then make sure it's patients and therapists March and open it in design view. And then we're going to do the following. Add a new condition to the query to select the records with contracts that start on or after March 1st, which is right there, and end on or before March 31st. So that's going to be the end date. Now, when you look at your criteria, if your criterias are on the same line, that's an and. So in our case, we want an and. So we're going to put it on the same line. And so we want all the end dates that are less than or equal to March 31st. So we're going to less than equal and do 3/31/16. Okay. Then we want to sort the records in ascending order by date. So here for start date, under the sort column, we're going to say ascending. And then change the start date field so it appears in the query results. So we're going to check box. And so it follows the last name field in the query design. So what we want to do is move it back over between last name and end date right there. So we're going to highlight if you hover over the very top of it, see how your arrow changes, and then click, you'll see how the whole column gets highlighted. And then if you click and drag, you're going to see that dark line follows you where you go, and you want that dark line to be between last name and end date, and that will move your column. Once you've done that, you can run it, and you'll see dates are March. And then close it, make sure you save it. 10. Create a new query in design. Uses the therapist table. So we're going to create query.
We're going to use the therapist table. Say close. Let's open it up so that we see all the fields. And then we're going to add last name, specialty, certification, hire date, and minors in that order to design. Add the condition to the certification field to select records that contain the value MPT. So in the certification field, your criteria is going to be equal, and put quotes, and put MPT and your double quotes. Okay, then we're going to save it as MPT. Say OK, run it, and you should only see therapists with MPT. Then you can close it. Okay, step 11. We're going to see the MTP query. Rename it as MPT or minors. So copy and then paste. And we're going to say MPT or minors. Say OK. And then let's open that in Design View. A new query to select a record with a certification field MPT or a record that the therapist accepts patients who are minors.
So this is your OR condition. So we need to come down here to OR.
And because this is because this minors field is a yes/no field, we need to specify whether or not we want those that are yes or those that are no, and we want those that are yes because we want the therapists that accept minors. So we're just going to type in yes. And then run it, and you're going to see now you've got here PT, so it's not MPT, but they do accept. And here you have MPT, but does not accept minors, which means that is our OR condition. It's either or. And then close it and save it if it asks you to. 11. Create a new query in Design View that is based on the patient and billing table. So create query design, patient
And billing.
close. Open that up so we can see all the fields. Okay, we need the last name and first name from the patient table in that order. The last name, first name, and then sessions and amount from the billing table. That's all we need to do. Right click and say save, and it's going to be patient amounts. And then run it. And so you should see all the patients, their sessions, and their amounts. Okay, the next thing we want to do now in amounts data sheet, here in the data sheet, we want to add the total row. So we're going to come up here and say totals. So now we've got this total row down here at the bottom. And then use the function to calculate the total number of sessions, the total of all contract amounts. So we're going to come down here and we're going to say sum. So that's going to sum all of our sessions. And here we're going to say sum all to give you the total amount of all of those sessions. So it's not, it's not the number of person. It is it's total everything that you see. Okay, once you've done that, you're going to save it, and then you can close it. Okay, 14, create a new query in Design View. Patient and billing tables. I'm going to save it as contracts, or contract days, I'm sorry.
Okay, and then add the last name field from the patient table, and then add sessions, start date, and end date. So sessions, start date, end date from the billing table in that order. And then we're going to create a calculated field named number of days in the 5th column that determines the number of days in each contract by creating an expression that subtracts the start date field from the end date field, and then set the caption property days. Okay, we're going to do that by
not using that. We're going to right click
and we're going to say build. And we're going to come down and we want to look in our file, you know, in our, where we are, and we want to look at our tables. I'm sorry, actually we want to look at contract days.
Okay, I had to actually, when you click on contract days here, the fields that you've selected should show up. But if they don't, then what I had to do was actually close down my file and reopen it, and now it shows up. So back to what we were doing. We want the end date and then minus the start date because that's our contract. And we're going to say OK. Now, where it says EXPR1 is where we're going to highlight EXPR1. Do not get that colon. Highlight EXPR1 and name it number of days. Now, make sure there's no spaces. This is just the field that we're calling it. And so if you run this, you're going to see here it says number of days, and you get the number of days. But we also want to change the caption so that that number of days actually says number space of space days. So if you right click again here on this field and go down to properties, then you get your general property sheet over here on the right hand side, and you've got caption. And so now in caption you can say number of days with the spaces. And then once again save it, run it, and you're going to see it says number of days now. Now it says sort the value of the number of days. So let's come back here to sort, and we want it in descending order. And then save and run the query, and then resize the number of days column to best fit. So I'm going to best fit that, and I'm going to save it and close it. Okay. Step 15, create a new query in design view. So I'm going to go create, design, query design, and we're going to base it on the billing and therapist tables. We're going to save it as therapist totals. And then we're going to add the therapist ID and the last name. Whoops, wrong field. Okay, we want the therapist ID and the last name from the therapist table. And then we want the sessions and amount fields from the billing table. Okay, and then for each therapist, use an aggregate function to calculate the total number of sessions and the total amount billed for those sessions. For these two columns, use the field names number of sessions and total amount, and the captions number of sessions and total amount respectively.
Okay, so we're going to do this by clicking our totals button up here. And you see how it says by and group by. And here, though, we want to say, and here we want to say sum.
And we're going to, for sessions, we want the field name to be number of sessions. So we're going to say number of sessions, and then you're going to put a colon. Because what the colon does is says what's before it is what we're going to name, and what's after it is the field that we're doing the calculation on. So that one's going to be number of sessions, and then for amount, we're going to say total amount, and put your colon. And then we want our property sheet. So we're going to say properties, and caption for total amount is going to be total amount with a space. And then the properties of number of sessions is going to be number of sessions with spaces. Okay, then they do not want us to sort anything. So we're going to save and run the query. So we're going to say save. We're going to run it. And you're going to see number of and the total amounts. So what it's done, see, you only have the therapist is only listed one time, even though it may have numerous number of clients. We're just looking how many sessions has that therapist had, and then how much do we owe that therapist. So we need to resize the numbers and the total columns to best fit. So double click and double click to best fit, save it, and quit. So that was that was therapist totals, I'm sorry. And then after we are done with that, that is the end. So you're going to repair your database, save it, and then submit it. And show you compact and repair again. Go to the file, say compact and repair. And you're all done. Thank you.